Welcome to Week Old Beans episode 22. I am Ardot with my host.
Fowler.
I don't know why I had you muted, Fowler. I'm sorry. Repeat that. What did you say?
Well, you've said my name, so you have introduced me.
Alright, smartass. Anyway, this is Week
I'm
Old
being
Beans.
silenced because I speak the truth.
You'll be fine. You're not Jesus. You're okay. Nobody wants to listen to your word, okay? Uh, anyway, this is episode 22 of Week Old Beans. I am excited for this episode because I feel like it's been a long time coming. We're going to talk about one of the most important figures, arguably, of the past 25 years of American politics, George W. Bush. You may know him as the poncho pincher. He gets stuck in ponchos a lot. You may know him as George Bush doesn't care about black people. W. You may know him as Raptor attacks. Watch this drive and mistaking the war in Ukraine for the war in Iraq. But we're not here to talk about his gaffes. We're actually just going to talk about his legacy, just like we did with Barack Obama and sort of the political, I guess, ramifications of that presidency. I feel like George W. is a figure that is going to go down in history as being not being recognized as the catalyst that he is.
Well, it's hard. It's hard to reckon with the fact, like, it's one thing for you to be a terrible person or an evil demagogue or whatever, who consciously ruined the nation. But I think it's difficult for people to grasp their minds around the fact that like a 40 IQ moron was actually able to like, be one of the most instrumental presidents in the modern era. You know what I mean?
I wouldn't go as far as to say he's 40 IQ. That's a
I've seen the photos of him getting trapped in his poncho. I think he definitely is. He's just not there, you know.
We love him anyway. It's okay. We love all of God's children equally, no matter your talents. It's fine. You know what I mean? No, for real. But like, I think I think a lot of people are going to look back and see Trump as sort of the catalyst to the downfall of America. But honest to God, it started with Bush. It really did. Fowler, you've got a lot more statistics on this than I do, so why don't you give people an overview of exactly, I guess if you could summarize the legacy of George W. Bush's presidency, especially for those listening who might be younger. I mean, you and I we were born. When was his reelection for second term? 2004? Yeah, 2004. So we were.
Yeah, I think so.
We were born the year I think.
We should definitely summarize who he is first before we go into his legacy.
Okay, I'll let you do that. Summarize. I was gonna dox our ages, but I feel like people can tell. People can tell from our voices how old we are. But we are of the Bush generation. Let's just say that.
Although neither of us, I think, were politically engaged.
No, because we were literal children.
So Bush is the son of H.W. Bush, who was an okay moderate Republican in spite of, being Me Too'd for grabbing women's asses without their permission. Bush
did not know that until last month.
Bush was but the main thing Bush is known for is he was a pretty disastrous president. He left the presidency with like a 20% approval rating, but Bush really, he did, I think, three things really. He completely fumbled Hurricane Katrina, and he was like not prepared for the hurricane, and he didn't really give aid. And then also or I guess the big two things are that and the Iraq War. Bush was president during 9/11 when Osama bin Laden attacked the Twin Towers, and Bush was responsible for the hyper militarization of the time period afterwards. I think it was his administration, I think, that created the Homeland Security
TSA
situation.
Created
the TSA. He led everyone into the Iraq War, which went really disastrously because of his own incompetence and how difficult the mission was. So he, um, so Bush was a president in crisis, and he
Can
was
I
mainly critiqued for being
can I
very
interrupt
bad
you?
at that.
Can I
Yeah.
interrupt you? I want to add a third thing that I think a lot of people don't take a lot of people take for granted. Completely destroying the American education system.
Oh, right, right. With the No Child Left
Hmm.
Behind stuff. Yeah.
Or at least severely altering it in a way that has had long lasting ramifications for education in this country.
Yeah, yeah.
So a lot. He's got a hefty track record. A hefty track record. And Fowler, I want to give the floor to you because I think during a lot of these podcasts I'm running my mouth and you're just interrupting. I want you to really summarize to people, I guess, the importance of his legacy compared to or I guess how his legacy has gone about bringing the political situation that is today.
Well, I think Bush has two legacies that are really powerful. One is he destroyed the war hawks. The Iraq war went so badly in every way that basically he, like, Iraq was our generation's Vietnam, where basically, like, before Bush came to power and did the Iraq war, there were a lot of people who were like, war hawks who thought that like we could use American power to basically go and alter like the world basically. And Bush was the end of that. Like he basically made Americans feel incapable of like changing the world around us. And he basically, like he is a huge reason why like Donald Trump and like the like are like hardcore isolationists, and they're not exactly and why it's so unpopular to even do good aid like the Ukraine, uh like giving to Ukraine. So I think he completely changed the game in that sense. And then the other thing that Bush did is he along with like I would say Nixon really destroyed the credibility of the presidency. He, before like Nixon and Bush, like people, Americans polled would say that they trusted the presidency, had their best interests in mind, and things like that. And Bush's like complete incompetence and corruption during the war led to like a cynicism about governance and a cynicism about the presidency that has had like massive implications.
He also, and you pointed this out earlier, he also uh, assisted in and I think this goes hand in hand with people's distrust of the government, but distrust of the media as well. I don't, I can't speak to antidotes because both you and I were much too young, but I think it was you that told me that around the time Bush was in office, it was when they really started polling people, and this bubbling distrust of the mainstream media was starting to come to the surface.
Yeah, Bush was an interesting combination. I don't know if he was overtly malicious in the way Donald Trump is, but Bush was like wildly incompetent to the point that like a lot of Americans began to like basically view him through like incredibly dark lens of like this figure who didn't have people's best interests in mind and was wildly incompetent, and like basically the people couldn't trust their leaders to govern them properly.
Yeah, which has a whole lot of poses a whole lot of problems going forward, and in a weird way, you could make the argument that Obama really tried, and maybe Obama was conscious of this. He really tried to smooth out those rough edges that Bush had created, but he just wasn't able to due to the sort of snowball effect that is the presidency. I mean, one of the problems with being in power for 8 years as president is that as the world becomes more globalized, more connected, as these intricate markets develop and these as things become more complex globally and even domestically, you don't really start to see the effects of bad economic policy or even bad social policy until a decade down the line. And so it creates this situation where you're in office for 8 years, you're George Bush, you fuck up the economy, but it really doesn't actually start to take effect until after you've left office. And the next guy that comes into power, it's essentially their job to clean up the mess. And, you know, if you're a smart media figure, and I think they did this with Barack Obama, and they did this with Trump as well, if you're an intelligent media figure, you understand that most people don't know how the economy works. You understand that, most people really just look at things as they are in the current time. They don't really give a fuck about how things were 8 years ago. Um, Context becomes, lacking. You can blame economic failures on the current president, despite the fact that the economic failures were caused by the guy before him. And, I think Obama was, where Obama shines in comparison to Bush, or at least where he shined while he was in office, is he was able to clean up a lot of the messes that Bush had made. Um, and we had a whole episode on Obama's legacy beforehand. And, I'm sure if you're president, you don't want to be cleaning up the mess that your predecessor has made, but it is necessary. If you get trapped in that, if you get kind of trapped in that sandwich of the dude before me sucked ass, and now I got to kind of fix his or hers mess. But
Yeah, it's one of the problems with democracy in general is like because you're only able to have the leader of your country be the leader of your country for like 8 years, like there can be a problem of no continuity where like the guy your guy leaves office and then like the new president has a completely different agenda in every way, and they instead of building on the past can just move the country in a radically different way, and it can create problems when people are not uh, like when larger projects that take more than a single administration never come to be
or
because yeah.
oh, I was gonna say it also becomes an issue when systems outside of government become more entrenched in the day-to-day life of the people. So for example, like the economy is one of those things. Like the federal government has effects on the economy and the president can manipulate the economy, but I mean, we live in a capitalist realist society now. Corporations and other private entities, they are concerned with profit and they want lasting profit. They don't just want to make a profit when Obama or Bush or Trump is in office. They want to make a continuous profit over the course of, years and years and years. And so, in a weird way, corporations and capitalism becomes sort of the entrenched continuity that resists being manipulated in any way, shape, or form. And um, that can cause a lot of problems in a democracy when the transition of power sort of means that there is a tradition of priority as well. And, um, which is why, in a weird way, these effects of bad economic policy can take such a long time to manifest.
Yeah, I mean, Truman famously was responsible for orchestrating the beginning of the Cold War, but like the Cold War was JFK's problem, the Cold War was Nixon's problem. Like a generation after Truman died, people were still being forced to deal with the implementations of his policies.
Yeah, yeah, and it's in the same case with Iraq and Afghanistan. It was Bush's issue, it was Obama's issue, it was Trump's issue, and it was Biden's issue, and he ripped the Band-Aid off, rightfully so, in my opinion, and said that he wasn't going to make it his issue. But where he will stand on the historical scale for that has yet to be determined.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, so Bush is a tricky one. He's a tricky one to dissect, I think, because he was kind of, and I would argue, Obama as well. They were kind of the end of normalcy in American politics. Um, and where that began, you can put it on Bush. You could put it on Nixon as well. Um, but I mean, I think you and I would both put it on Bush because a lot of the precedents that exist in American politics, a lot of the massive expansion of political power, a lot of that came from his administration. And there are some arguments to be made that in a globalist a growing global world, that some of those expansions were necessary. I mean, I think the Department of Homeland Security, along with the TSA, I mean, I don't know if those agencies, and I just want to say to everybody listen, I think it's absolutely batshit insane that the TSA did not exist before fucking 2001. Y'all were raw dogging on airplanes. Have you lost your goddamn mind?
Yeah,
It's
it
fucking
was a different
crazy.
time.
I know, but still, just like even though it was a different time, I feel as if it would have been a good idea to say, "Hey, you know what? Maybe we should have some sort of security at an airport." That's just me.
Although they've done studies that the TSA is not effective in any way. They have done studies where they've like implanted fake weaponry in the suitcases,
Oh,
and the TSA
absolutely.
is
Yeah, no, TSA doesn't give a fuck. Uh, I'm not saying that like the TSA was the correct solution. I am saying that not having some sort of way to check people before they get onto airplanes is fucking crazy. Uh,
no, it's fair.
because you're in a giant middle box, and if someone pulls out a knife and starts swinging, you can't run away. Like where are you going to go, bitch? Like you can't get off the train. You're in a fucking airplane. You gotta fight that bitch. And I don't want to. I don't. I didn't. I look. I pay too much for flights to fight people in midair. Okay, pay way too much.
That's some
But
weak shit.
no, it's called not being stupid.
I
I fight my
I can
enemies on the ground like God intended. Okay,
I
not in a
if I'm
giant
not
middle bird.
fighting if I'm not fighting people on my plane ride, then there's no point in me getting on the plane to begin with, in my
I'm a
opinion.
real daughter of the Lord. I fight on the ground. Okay, just like it says in the Bible. But no, it's. I mean, the Department of Homeland Security, ICE, is one of the institutions that was created as well. You know the
Well, Bush created the Patriot Act. Bush created the Homeland Security. I don't know if Bush created the NSA, but he definitely funded the shit out of the NSA. Like Bush created the police state that we live in. Like he's the one who stripped back people's privacy protections. Like he comes from the era of like if you have nothing to hide, you have nothing to fear. He essentially he hyper militarized our society, and he pushed society to be a much more fearful place and a much more invasive place in which the government did have the ability to massively overreach and to basically um, investigate without really due cause uh, the American citizenry,
yeah,
justified by 9/11 and people basically feeling like they had no recourse.
yeah. It's awfully similar to the Alien and Seditions Act, except for it didn't really target free speech. It's really interesting how there has been sort of a precedent for this sort of expansion of violations of privacy, and the justifications for the Alien and Seditions Act were the exact same as the justifications for the Patriot Act. The idea of trying to quash insurrection and quash um with the Alien and Seditions Act, it was a fear of rebellion from within the colonies during the the war with France, or the about to be war with France. Um, and the Alien and Seditions Act, despite the fact that it was, I think eventually it was overturned, a lot of those provisions still exist to this day. Um, the part of the Aliens and Seditions Act, from what I remember, was the Naturalization Act that made you have to be born in the United States to hold the office of the presidency, along with the fact that it raised the requirements for citizenship from 5 to 14 years. Um, which is still, from what I remember, what we use. It has to be 14 years. Um,
Yeah, I think that's right.
but and so even if like George, and I say all this because even if George Bush is long gone from office, I mean, we're two presidents, three presidents behind Bush. You know, the laws that are passed still have like they can have consequences that reach well 100, 150, 200 years into the future. And a lot of it I think is because it's like what we've talked about, where the public cares about what the public is told to care about. you know um the amount of laws we have on the books here in the United States, I mean, there's shit that goes all the way back to the 1700s, 16 or yeah, 1700s and 1800s, and like with a federal government this large, and even a state government this large, but definitely a federal government this large, with a federal government this large and this expansive, like it is impossible for the average man to keep up with all these pieces of legislation, and things slip through the cracks if not addressed.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
if Congress doesn't have the willpower, or even just like if they just don't feel like addressing a lot of this stuff.
It's it's definitely, I wonder if we will eventually go back to the presidential office being perceived as like overall a positive thing, or whether like we we sort of live through the death of that idealistic view of government in general.
I don't know. I mean, we got to talk about, shifting away partially from George H.W. Bush. We got to talk about our new speaker boy, just for a second, and then maybe we can use this as a quick commercial break, and then maybe we can pop back to old Georgie. But we got to talk about Mike Johnson. Uh,
Okay.
just for a hot second, just so I can get it off my chest because I feel like I need to. I'm gonna let you talk, Fowler, for a second. Tell the people who Mike Johnson is, and this is current day, currently in the news.
Mike Johnson is the new Speaker of the House. As I'm sure everyone knows, the Speaker battle was brutal ever since Matt Gaetz decapitated Kevin McCarthy and paraded
Yeah,
his disembodied
fucking
head
Mortal
around
Kombat
the.
fatality, that motherfucker. I'm sorry.
Yeah, ever since that, like the Republicans have really been struggling to basically replace the Speaker, and so Mike Johnson is who they picked. Mike Johnson is a hardliner. He's a MAGA conspiracy theorist, and he's also an enormous homophobe.
Yeah,
So
he looks like Stephen Colbert's evil cousin.
he kind of does.
Like if you told me, hey, can you draw Stephen Colbert from memory? This is who I would come up with. Um, yeah. So Mikey Mike and the Funky Bunch, he is a evangelical Christian. This is the most important appointment evangelicals have gotten in office probably since Mike Pence. Or definitely since Mike Pence. He is one of the most powerful figures in government now. He is directly in the line of succession for the presidency. Remember, the Speaker of the House is number 4 in the line of succession. Um, he is a piece of work. He is a piece of work. Um, he has said in speeches uh, that his Southern Baptist beliefs are the basis for his politics. Real good separation of church and state there, guys. Um, he is known for his extensive and outspoken opposition to legal abortion and gay rights, which he has had his entire life. Um, he also tried to assist in overturning the 2020 election. So we have a certified, homified traitor as Speaker of the House, a traitor to his nation and his people. Um, so fucking yay yay for that. Fowler, you want to comment? I'm getting depressed reading this.
Yeah, he in a sense the radical Republicans got everything they wanted, because it looked like with Jim Jordan losing the first the his 3 speaker votes and resigning, that like the radical Republicans were going to kind of be screwed by basically having to settle with a speaker who was a lot more a speaker who is like not as far right as McCarthy was, but for whatever weird demented reason, they they pick the moderates allowed like just an extreme hardliner to be the leader.
I'm just reading his Wikipedia page. I want to point out to people listening. Fowler, I didn't tell you this. In 2016, Johnson delivered a sermon that called the teaching of evolution one of the causes of mass shootings.
Oh, great. Yeah, I can't imagine that this is going to be the end of the battle. Like I think we're going to have more Republican chaos in the House than ever before.
Oh, Lord have mercy. All right, hopping back to our regularly scheduled programming. You want to talk more about George W?
Yeah, sure. So what is there to say? Let me think. W W is remembered, I think, relatively fondly now because compared to Trump, like W wasn't actively seeking the end of democracy, and W wasn't, the framing of W is that he was a wildly inept president, but also like W doesn't have a reputation for being a monster in the same way. Like the I think the general consensus that W was a really bad president, but like he was a well-intentioned president. And so he is kind of protected from himself a little bit.
Hmm.
But before Trump took power, like W was considered to be a like legendarily historically incompetent and terrible president.
Lord have mercy. I keep saying that. Sorry, I'm looking at Mike Johnson's Wikipedia page. I gotta stop. I'm making myself upset. Most cringe politician. Actually, least cringe politician. Or, I guess, like medium cringe. On a cringe scale of 1 to 5, how would you rank Mike Johnson?
We'll have to see how well he does as the Grand Poobah.
Grand fucking Koopa. All right, Fowler, I want this to be a short episode. My brain is getting tired. Uh, I mean, George H.W. he is the catalyst. I keep saying that, and I'll continue to say it. He really is, like, he might go down in history as being the beginning of the end. He was, no, for real, and it's upsetting because he seems like a nice man. Um, but he had a devil on his shoulder by the name of Dick Cheney, a man who we've not talked about yet, surprisingly.
W, I don't know how much I believe this narrative, but the cultural narrative of W is Dick Cheney, his vice president, was basically the president, and W was like a hapless moron who didn't realize that Dick Cheney was like orchestrating everything. I
Which
don't know how
I
much
don't
I.
know. I don't know what's worse, being a historical figure where everybody's like, yeah, you're just an idiot, or being evil. Like that. I don't know which one does worse damage to the ego.
Although I don't know if I buy that. Like W was a terrible human being. Like he wasn't like a jovial, kind-hearted man who got screwed. Like he very much was a monster. So I
Yeah,
think I think to some degree like that is,
it's cap,
yeah, it's damage control.
major cap. Well, rest assured, everybody listening, if I ever become the world leader, and I do some terrible shit, rest assured it was all me. There was nobody behind the scenes telling me what to do.
Although that's what you would say if you were a patsy.
No, it was all me. All right, it was all me. All fucking me. I was not being manipulated. Bad bitches like me don't get manipulated, Fowler. Just know that. It was all fucking me. Yeah, I mean, the narrative is a compelling one, and it like it may serve as a cushion, for Bush. Um, I don't know if it's peddled intentionally, but it is a. I think a lot of people just. I think people try to find explanations for things that they don't understand. I mean, don't get me wrong, Dick Cheney was brilliant. I mean, he was not stupid in any way, shape, or form. But, I think a lot of people, especially Americans, because we do hold our government to a high regard. I mean, I think, it creates a contradictory narrative where, America is held to a very high regard. Our institutions are held to a very high regard. I mean, the way we talk about our founding myth and the government that was created from it. I mean, even Republicans, despite the fact that they despise the federal government and they're ideologically they are opposed to the mere existence of government, they're the ones that are constantly screaming about George Washington, who believed in a strong federal government and who scream about the founding fathers, quote unquote, even if it is you know even if it's used as sort of a broad blanket term, like they talk about the strength of our institutions with reverence and appreciation, despite the fact that they're ideologically opposed to the existence of them in the first place. Um, so I think it's hard for a lot of people, especially with the way with how we regard our institutions and our politicians. I think someone like George W. Bush existing. I mean, there has to be another explanation. You know what I mean? It can't just be that he is maybe not intentionally malicious, definitely incompetent, definitely just not very good at what he does. But we can't just leave it at that because, in a weird way, that can reflect on sort of we live in a democracy, right? So if George W. Bush is incompetent and stupid, what does that say about the voters? I mean, not to be a dick, but like I think that's why there is such a why it's so hard for us to look at our politicians, and why we make these. That's why there's so much cap. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, Bush. A lot of demagogues, I think, make us look at. Not saying Bush was a demagogue, but a lot of our demagogues make us sort of look at the world or look at our voters, our fellow voters, and really wonder about things. You know, they point to the dangers of democracy, which is that the lowest common denominators sometimes allow people to rise to the top. It's like that great Star Wars quote, the only good Star Wars quote, in my opinion. Um,
Don't tempt me,
the
boy. Don't
this is
fucking
how
test me.
democracy dies with thunderous applause, which is a
Banger quote.
great line from a great line from an otherwise mediocre film
I still
franchise.
think Revenge of the Sith is the closest thing to a live action anime that we ever got. All right, it don't Revenge of the Sith is a good movie. Revenge of the Sith is a good film. It's not like fucking Oscar worthy, but it is a good film.
We have live action anime already. Look at One Piece live
I
animated.
haven't
Okay,
watched
we don't
One Piece,
need.
bitch. I don't know what the fuck you're talking about. I've not seen One Piece.
Yeah, you're not a woman of culture.
I'm
Is the
sorry. I
thing.
apologize. I just like watching I like watching I don't know. What's a fucking woman anime? I don't know. Nobody watches female anime. I
You're
don't know.
forgetting about Claymore, your favorite anime,
Claymore
which is
is
all women.
Claymore is a manga and Claymore is an anime. Claymore is fucking banger. And it's not a it's a shonen anime. For those of y'all who have not read Claymore, please read Claymore. It's fucking great. Anyway, I think we need to end this episode. I'm going to end this episode having subtly insulted the American voting base. Don't take it personally, guys. I think critique is I think the first step in finding a solution is admitting that you have a problem. So let's not vote for Donald Trump in 2024, and let's make the right decision and vote for literally anybody but him. I believe in you, America. I think we can do better. I want better for America. I want better for all of you. All right, don't. Sometimes you got to put the crack pipe down and face reality. So. And I'm not speaking about Hunter Biden, okay? He already put the crack pipe down long ago. It's fine. Uh,
Did he?
I'm gonna just
I
say he
thought.
did to make myself feel better. I'm just gonna say he put that crack pipe down long ago. I like that we just don't talk about the fact that he probably did smoke crack in the White House. I like that we just don't. That's just not something we
No,
talk
because
about.
he was an adult when Joe Biden became the president, so he wouldn't have been in the White House.
They found a crack. They found crack in the White House, and they never found out who did it. And I feel like the American people deserve to know: was Joe
Hunter
just
Biden is
nuffing
like
that white powder?
60. He was not.
Hunter
Hunter Biden's like
Biden's like
60.
40. Hunter Biden is like 40 years old.
Yeah,
Who the
so he was
fuck?
a grown ass man. He was a grown ass man. He wasn't living in the White House with Joe
He
Biden. He
could have been
was.
visiting in the White House to smoke crack. He could have been doing that. You just don't have a good imagination to imagine the possibilities. All right.
The only person canonically
Could
who
have
had
been
drug
Major. It
problems
could
in
have
the
been the
White
dog.
House. The only person canonically who had drug problems in the White House is W. Speaking of the topic, W was so infamous for getting drunk and throwing up or falling down that when HW was the president, his Secret Service code name was Tumblr.
I love that for him. Uh. Anyway, we got to end this episode. I got to do other stuff. Fowler, sign us out, please.
Uh, that that ends the story of W, the most incompetent president we ever had. Please don't vote for people like him in the
Why
future.
are you talking like he's dead?
He's dead to me.
Oh, well, I'm sure he'll be very upset to hear about that when I tell him next Wednesday at brunch. Get the fuck out of here. Anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see y'all in the next video.